Ooh, welcome to the Fairfax Scary Report, here on the Fairfax Scary Network. I'm your host, BJ Kubu Rulis, along with Paul the King Frummel and Mirza the Brokeback Bosnian. We're here tonight with an extra scary version of the Fairfax Sports Report. We're in week 9 of football. Stick around for all your scary clips, scary moments, and what's even more terrifying, folks, we're going to be spending an extra amount of time talking about field hockey.
No!
That's absolutely terrifying to me. Folks, we've got an action-packed show for you tonight here on the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm your host, BJ Kubarulis, along with Paul Frummel and Mirza Krispavich of the Connection newspapers. We've got Lizzie McManus, Oakton field hockey coach, fresh off the team's tournament championship victory in the Concord District, and welcoming them into the Northern Region tournament. Lizzie McManus will be joining us tonight to make sense of this crazy regional bracket. We're also going to talk about, of course, your frightfully scary and beautiful football. Ooh. But first, I want to thank the folks that make this show possible. Of course, we're talking about our underwriters, CCI Screen Printing, for all your screen printing needs. 703-978-0257. Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models at 703-383-6299. And of course, it's going to be an extra scary edition here on the Fairfax Sports Network. Gentlemen, let's try to make sense of this crazy and terrifying field hockey tournament that we have on our hands. In the Northern Region, teams will be joining each other. The Concord will be playing the National, and the Liberty will be playing the Patriot in the regional tournament. We want to get a chance to pick Lizzie McManus' brain from Oakton High School, as they're a team that's primed to do some things in the postseason, guys.
Ran right through the Concord District.
Definitely ran right through the Concord District. And Lizzie's going to be joining us. But first, before we get to Lizzie, Paul, or the King,
Thank you very much.
I'd like for you to introduce yourself to the folks at home.
I am the King. Woo! It's terrifying.
And of course, to our Brokeback Bosnian, Mirza. Please introduce yourself to the viewers at home who have tuned in to see sports tonight, but instead will be seeing us act like 10-year-olds.
Howdy, folks. I am the Brokeback Bosnian Mirza, and I just can't quit this show. I can't.
There's your name right there.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, folks, we're going to be getting Coach Lizzie McManus on the phone here with us pretty soon to talk about field hockey in the Northern Region, something that I know all you folks are looking forward to as we're jumping into the 2006 Northern Region Field Hockey Tournament. Coach Lizzie McManus now joining us. Coach, welcome to a frightfully scary version of the Fairfax Sports Report as we're creeping up on Halloween. How are you, Coach?
I'm good. How are you?
You can't see us from where you are right now, but we are in costume, so I'm sure you'll be chuckling as you see us at home. That is, if you're not terrified when you see us tonight at home.
I'm chuckling now. Don't worry.
Okay, Coach. I want to jump right into this field hockey tournament. First, we know that you guys are the #1 seed coming out of the Concord District, one of the toughest districts in the Northern Region. Tell us a little bit about how you guys got to that third tournament championship victory in as many years and what you guys had to do to get there in a win over Robinson on Tuesday night.
Well, this year had to, out of the 3 years, it was by far the toughest just throughout the regular season. Nobody was a clear favorite, I don't think, until Tuesday night. And playing a 6 seed, it was proof that this district is pretty unpredictable. But Robinson played a great game, and we played hard, and the girls wanted to redefend the title, so we did.
Coach, how surprised were you to play Robinson? Were you preparing for a Chantilly, and then you get the Rams? Were you guys taken aback by that, or you think you guys already had what it took to take on the Rams?
You know, I think halfway through the season we stopped concerning ourselves with who we were playing and just concerning ourselves with our own play and making sure that we show up and play hard. And that's the same thing we did for the finals. We just played the way we did the night before against Westfield. So that's all we did to prepare.
When I was talking with Coach Ralph Chapman from Chantilly after his first round win, he was talking about how your girls from Oakton play 110%. He wished he had a team full of your girls. Is that something you've noticed from previous teams that Oakton's had, that these girls just go out there and give their all?
Well, actually, it's interesting. This is the first team where I've had, a bunch of girls that are really, really skilled instead of just one or two. So it has really helped us throughout this season. They're extremely athletic, and a lot of them are from our state champion lacrosse team, so they do already work together very well. But this is the most skilled team individually that I've had.
Hey, Coach, who do you think is going to be posing the biggest challenge here in the Northern Region tournament now that we're coming into it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be pretty exciting. I know Woodson's always up there, and Lake Braddock's up there. I know Langley's coming in strong. Annandale is. I mean, a lot of these people have been, playing really hard at the end of the season. So this region tournament's going to be pretty exciting, and I'm sure there'll be surprises all the way through.
And Coach, you guys are a team, and you mentioned this when you were talking about you guys' skill level. You guys have a lot of skilled players. And speaking of that skill level, you use that in those 7-on-7 overtimes where you guys have just really, a lot of your victories have come in overtime this year. That's something you see during tournament play. Having won, I believe now it's 5 games in overtime, do you think that's going to play towards you guys when you get into those dog fights there in the later parts of the Northern Region tournament?
Sure. I think that's a definite advantage for us. I don't know if anybody's had as many 7-on-7 games as we've had, but, when you go into the region, you're hitting a pretty comparable team. So I'm hoping that if we do hit an overtime, we'll be successful because we've got about 6 girls that are really, really strong. So if we get them on the field, I think we'll finish.
And Coach, I just wanted you to get a chance to mention some of the, obviously field hockey a team sport, but you've had some standouts on your team this year. I know 2 of them, Ashley Kimmener and Kristen Gerard. Tell me a little bit about those 2 players and anybody else that you think has really brought it for the Oakton Cougars this year.
Well, the 2 of them, yes, have been playing fantastically all throughout the season, especially in this playoff season. Kristen Gerard's a senior forward, and I believe she's got 8 goals and 6 assists. She's the heart and soul of our team, a very quick, speedy, skilled, talented player. And Ashley Kimmener is a junior captain, and she's our center mid and controls the midfield really well. And then I have 2 backs who are seniors as well, Stephanie Light and Victoria Cable, who are just coming along fantastically and, able to stop opponents and get the balls up to Ashley Kimmener and Kristen Gerard so we can play up in the offensive part of our field.
How important is it that the tournament is on your home turf there, and not just the region tournament, but also the state tournament if you were to advance that far? You guys are playing on your home turf the whole way through from here on out.
Yeah, it's a comfortable thing, to not have to travel, but to be honest, it's not something that we focus on. We've been to the region tournament before, and of course lost every year, so, depending on what game it is. So it's not a complete advantage to us, but it is a nice, comfortable feeling for them, and to get fans to the games is always nice, but it's not the most important thing.
Now, Coach, you mentioned how difficult and unpredictable the Concord district is. It's definitely, if not the most, one of the most difficult districts in this region. How much of an advantage is that to you guys playing your regular season in this district when you enter the regional tournament?
Well, I think the competition that all of us have, experienced through this season has definitely helped, but things are so new in the region playoffs. The 4 seeds want to upset the 1 seeds, and they'll do anything they can to do it. So I don't think there's really anything to be expected there. I appreciate the competition we've had, but there are games that need to be played, and we have to be able to play them, for 60 minutes and finish.
Definitely.
Hey, Coach, your 3 losses came in your first 4 games of the season. What were you thinking at that point, and how did you turn it around?
I actually, one morning I went to Borders and spent $100 on coaching books because I was about to I don't know what I was going to do. But we lost to Woodson and Langley, and so I knew those were good teams, but I really did have to kind of take a breath and make sure that I got these girls on track. I knew they were skilled. They just needed to believe it. And I think the turnaround came when we went down to the beach where we faced teams that are not part of this area. And so there was nothing to be expected, and they just went out there and had fun. It was a nice atmosphere, and since then we've been really, really going strong.
Coach, want to get a chance to ask you real quick, looking at this bracket, you guys obviously play Washington and Lee in the first round, and I don't want to write anybody off per se, but if you were to advance, you guys would face most likely, it looks like, a strong Langley team, and then a little bit further down the road, you could see anybody from Annandale, Marshall, or Edison. That is no easy road to what could potentially be a Northern Region Championship game. How do you prepare for each of those games in such a short amount of time?
No, these games are going every other day, so you barely have time to prepare for the next game. But I'm going to like it. I think my girls play a lot better against competitive teams, so I'm looking forward to any team we face, and looking forward more so to watching my girls compete with them, because they're a fun group, and when it's their own game, there's really nothing that's going to stop them. So we'll prepare just as we normally do, just being able to play Oaton's game.
And Coach, you are playing at 8 o'clock at night. Are you going to go and check out some of the earlier games, watch maybe some of your competition?
I have class till about 5, so after that I will probably stop by in the freezing cold, yeah.
Folks at home, you heard it from one of the best coaches in the region,
thank
Lizzie McManus, Oakton field hockey coach. Good luck in the postseason, Coach. I'm sure you'll see each one of us out there, and we'll get a chance to talk to you after what looks like could be some victories for you guys here, getting deep into the postseason. Coach, thanks for joining us on the Fairfax Sports Report.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
That's good.
So, guys, obviously, Lizzie's got a lot of insight on the region, having played a lot of these tough teams. And when you look at the road that the Oakton Cougars might have to face going through this regional tournament, it's a heck of a region. I mean, you obviously the first round matchup against Washington and Lee is nothing too scary here on our Frightfully Scary report tonight. But facing a potentially a Langley or a Marshall that upset so many teams on the way to their state tournament run last year, and then potentially facing the national district champion in Edison, that's not an easy bracket, guys. What have you seen, and what teams do you think have a chance to get deep into the postseason?
What's most important is if they were to go the whole way, they wouldn't have to face Woods until the championship game, so they can get there. That's what they should be scared of right now. Is I had to. I'm sorry. Is Woodson, but definitely, like she mentioned, they lost to Langley, so that might be a problem. Looking at Annandale, Edison is a team that looks like they could make a nice run there. They got to get past Westfield first, but if they get on a roll, you could see possibly an Edison Langley semifinal. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Mirza, you've seen some Patriot District teams. Are they bringing anything potentially to the table that could cause some fits for some other teams here in the Northern Region's tournament?
Oh, definitely. I think, first of all, Lake Braddock, the Patriot District champion, they're an amazing team with a lot of team speed and a lot of team skill. And I saw them play against Annandale last night in the Patriot final. And Annandale is a team that gave them a really good game and probably should have tied the game up at some point. On the other hand, West Springfield is in and out, and they're a really good team as well. And we mentioned earlier Edison from the National District. I mean, they won their National District final 4-0. They're not a team to overlook at all.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting for the teams in this area, and we've talked about it before, but now as we're getting into the postseason, the state field hockey tournament has not been out of Virginia Beach in I couldn't tell you how long. I mean, it's been years. So for these girls to get to play at home, not have to travel like Coach McManus said, she doesn't want to give up that it's obviously an advantage. I mean, it is an advantage, and you get a chance to play at home. Your fans are there, and obviously the good thing about the Northern Region is that they support each other. Mm-hmm. And when whoever advances, all of the field hockey girls from this area who necessarily wouldn't be able to stay around in Virginia Beach once their team lost, they'll get a chance to stick around, whoever it might be representing this region in the state tournament, to support that team, and I think that's very important.
I believe that even when Northern Region, when they beat up on each other this next week, I believe that they will stick around and watch the state tournament and cheer for their Northern Region teams there. So I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I mean, first time in a while, a great atmosphere for the Northern Region during the state tournament. But let's just see what happens with this regional tournament first, definitely.
Mirza, I want to get to you in a second. I'm not sure if we have a bracket of the regional tournament. We did want to get a chance to show the folks at home. If not, they could probably find that on our website on the Northern Region Tournament, Field Hockey Tournament. Mirza, real quick before we go on, you've seen some of these teams in Robinson from the Concord. Are they now, as a number 2 seed after coming in from so deep in the Concord District, are they a legitimate threat in the Northern Region Tournament?
I think anybody that can make it to the Concord District Final is a legitimate threat in the Northern Region Tournament. One thing about Robinson was, yeah, they were the number 6 seed, but in all but one of their 8 losses this season, they've lost by 1 goal.
Wow.
So it's not like they're a bad team that's been getting blown out. They've lost 7 games by 1 goal, and they show that they're that contender, that they're even with these teams that they've lost to throughout the season by making it to the district final and losing to a very talented Oakton team 1-0.
Woodson, a team from the Liberty, which is a team, obviously, folks, that has been dominant over the last couple of years. I got a chance to talk to Coach Andy Moore from Woodson, who is a coach that has coached in this area for years, was supposed to hang it up after last year and ended up coming back for one last year, and Woodson takes the number 1 seed out of the Liberty District. Obviously, Langley is a team that can compete. Langley's only loss of the regular season came to Woodson. They were 10-1 in the regular season. Langley just defeated Marshall, a difficult team in the postseason. I'll tell you, those Marshall Statesman girls are very scrappy when it comes to field hockey, so you'll have to watch out for those Liberty teams. Woodson really has the strongest chance of coming out of the top half of the Northern Region, as we see the Northern Region field hockey bracket there. Lake Braddock up on top taking on Jefferson. Jefferson, the number 4 out of the Liberty. And then you have Yorktown, the number 2 out of the National, versus Chantilly, the number 3 out of the Concord. Robinson's the number 2 out of the Concord, taking on the National District's number 3. And of course, we talked about Woodson will have a chance, could potentially only face 1 or 2 Concord teams out of that district. I think that's the key coming out of that top half of the bracket. Woodson's going to be taking on West Springfield there at Oakton High School at 8 p.m. on October 26th, folks. That's when your Northern Region Field Hockey Tournament starts. Everything at Oakton this year, folks. I want to show you the second half of our Northern Region Field Hockey bracket. Of course, Edison takes on Concord. Well, it's been a powerhouse in past years. Westfield, not so much this year.
We just don't know which team's going to show up. If the dominant Westfield Bulldogs show up, then Edison might be in trouble.
The Marshall Statesmen, a team built for the postseason, taking on Annandale. Langley versus T.C. Williams. The Langley-Oakton matchup that could potentially come out of that bottom half of the bracket there is one that you definitely have to watch. I definitely believe that will be one of the best matchups in the Northern Region Tournament. Langley, a team that loves to go on fast breaks and can score in a hurry. Okay, folks, I know it's been terrifying so far there at home, scary as it is listening to us talk about field hockey, and you are worried and frightened that there wouldn't be enough football. Well, I can tell you, there's going to be plenty of football. Before we get to football, we want to show you. Thank you, King. Thank you, King, for transitioning us to football. See you, King. But Paul, you're the real king.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, trick or treat, guys. Trick or treat time.
All right, here
We're
we
going to talk a lot of Northern Region football. We've talked about field hockey and scared our viewers half to death, thinking there would be no football tonight. I think that might have been the scariest part of the show tonight. Let's talk a little bit about football. Guys, we want to jump right into the Concord District. Of course, you know we're going to talk about Concord football. When it comes to Northern Region football, Concord District has been one of the most exciting districts in years past, and because there's so much parity from this year, it has been absolutely exciting. I want to show you the current standings in the Concord District. The Concord District, a district that has seen teams jumping all around this year. Westfield, still undefeated, one of only 2 teams in the Northern Region that is undefeated. Chantilly is undefeated in the district and 6-1 on the season. Their PowerPoints will tell you about them later and what opportunities they have ahead of them if they can continue to win. Robinson 3-1 and 5-2 on the season, just suffered a difficult win right there underneath them to that team right underneath them in the standings, which is Oakton, who evened out their district record at 2-2, 4-3 on the season. And then there's Centerville bouncing back in the district with their first win in the district this year, also 5-3 overall. And Fairfax and Herndon still continue to struggle in the Concord District. Just can't seem to win in that district. But Herndon definitely, has gotten some wins so far this year outside of that meat grinder that it is the Concord. Let's talk about this Concord district, guys. Tell me what you think. Who's got the most legitimate shot at going into the postseason? Before we get to individual teams, give me your prediction, Paul. Who's coming out of the Concord district?
I'm going to say Westfield because it's the safe choice to make, and it's the safest choice you can possibly make in the Concord district when we know nothing pretty much. Teams are upsetting everybody else. I like Chantilly. I love Chantilly. I've liked them all year. Their defense is amazing. Defense, wins championships, all that. I'm just going to say Westfield and Chantilly. I mean, everybody else looks like to be below them, although Robinson is also there. So I'm really confused with the Concord.
So the King picks Westfield or Chantilly.
Or maybe Robinson.
What does Brokeback have to say?
I like Oakton's chances too.
I can't say nothing about Robinson. They are the team that I'm going to pick out of it because they've always come out of it. Despite the tough loss that they had this week to Oakton, I think they're the team that's going to come out of this district. They play those tough Chantilly and Westfield teams the next 3 weeks. I think those are going to be unbelievable games to watch. And but at the same time, they're an experienced team. At least the coaching staff is, and I know they're gonna. I'm pretty sure they're going to come out of it on top of both of those games.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Chantilly, Paul. And I'm not going to pick my team just yet because I'm going to wait until the end of the year and tell you who I picked, and then I'll look like a genius.
That's a smart way to go.
All right, tell me about Chantilly's defense, Paul. I mean, you've seen them. I've seen them. They're an incredible defense. I know that Austin Morris, a defensive back for them, was dinged up this past week. I don't believe he'll be playing in Chantilly's next game. But defense has been, and Morris has helped lead that gritty defense. That's been the story for the Chargers this year.
Well, definitely. They make the big plays when they need to make those big plays. They're holding opponents to a little over 5 points per game, which is unheard of. And, the defense is actually scoring for them, too. So when you can stop, in high school, it's a lot about offense, a lot about, running backs. And when you can stop those, when you can stop those high-powered Concord offenses with your defense, you're going to win quite a bit.
Okay. Chantilly has been a team that traditionally, and we had a chance to have one of our reporters cover the game that Chantilly won over Herndon this past week. Chantilly, of course, beat Herndon 10-7 to stay undefeated in the Concord District and further their hopes for a Northern Region playoff spot. Chantilly right now, 3rd overall in the PowerPoints. We'll get a chance later to show you exactly where everybody in the region is sitting in the scary PowerPoint race. But guys, let's talk a little bit about Oakton. A 14-7 victory over Robinson. I was there. That's creepy. That is creepy. Okay, I got a chance to be at the Oakton-Robinson game. It was a 14-7 victory for the Oakton Cougars, starting a sophomore quarterback in Ryan Harris. This is a guy that came in as a sophomore, could throw the ball downfield, but really, guys, the story for the Oakton Cougars was Jonathan Kedrock, a fullback that last year was behind fullback Taylor Nalepa, never got a chance to get really onto the game field, was the practice field fullback, really gave people hell in the weeks leading up to games to prepare for teams, and that's such an underrated thing that guys do. Jonathan Kedrock came in and ran for a career high 25 carries, 126 yards, and also scored a touchdown in a close game. At Ryan Harris, like I did mention, a sophomore quarterback, the load was really taken off of him, but he also competed. He threw for the 2-point conversion that put Oakton up 14-7. Now this game was more in Oakton's favor than it appeared. Oakton knelt on the ball on Robinson's 1-yard line with 10 seconds left. They could have punched it in for another score. Should have been a 21-7 victory. Want to say before we move on to from this victory, Oakton over Robinson, that Robinson was without their running back Mike Meyer, who did not get a chance to compete in this game. He's led the team in offense. He's got 6 touchdowns on the year and over about 600 yards. A guy that has really had, like Coach Bendorf said before the game, has a nose for the end zone. He dislocated his elbow, and it looks like, he doesn't want to admit it yet, but it looks like he could possibly be out for the remainder of the season. I know he's thinking he's going to get back earlier, and of course Robinson wants to get him back earlier. We'll have to see how that goes. I know he still had some medical things to go through this week to see if he could make it back. But this Oakton victory, guys, is they don't really beat Robinson. I talked to Coach Joe Thompson after the game, and he said, look, I know we have a graphic to show you just how how much Oakton has not beaten Robinson since they last beat them in the 2002 season, which was for the Northern Region Championship. You know, Joe Thompson said his staff went over 4 years of film before this game in the week leading up to see how they could beat Robinson. You see there in 2006, which is this year, Oakton 14-7 victory. We don't know what their final record will be, but last year they lost 37-21 in the regular season to the Rams, and they went 12-2 and won the Division VI AAA state title. They lost again in 04, 23-17, finished with a 10-2 record. Again, though, in the playoffs, they lost to Robinson 29-22, and of course finished with the same 10-2 record. 28-0 shutout in 03, where they finished 6-4. And then, of course, the last time before Jonathan Kedrock carried the Cougars to victory this past Friday, Oakton had not beaten Robinson until the 2002 Northern Region Championship game, where they beat them 31-29. Oakton obviously winning that game. I believe I wrote that incorrectly, but Oakton won that game 31-29 and won the school's first ever Northern Region title. So it's been a while, guys. Mirza, tell me why the Robinson Rams are going to bounce back.
Well, they're going to bounce back because they always find a way to bounce back. You know, year after year we talk about the Rams losing this player or that player, but every year somebody else steps up, and it's always more than one person. This year it's been Mike Meyer leading the charge. Unfortunately, he's out injured at this point. We're hoping the best for him. We're hoping he's going to be back there because he's a huge part of that team. He carries half of it. Somebody else steps up to carry the other half of it. I think they're going to have 2 or 3 players step up in his place and help them bounce back, like we said. I think the key for them is this week's game against Chantilly. I think it has huge playoff implications, and it might help them forget about the loss to Oakton this week.
Well, Paul, you wanted to talk a little bit about Centerville. Centerville's been a team that we haven't been able to really put our finger on this year. I mean, we can't, you know, they had so much promise coming in, and we talked about this last week and showed the people at home a graphic about exactly what it was Centerville was unable to do coming into this season. Tell me a little bit about why you think a win over Fairfax has put them back, you know, on the scene in the Concord.
Well, there's one thing that before they can move forward is they need to admit that they're not going to the playoffs. They need to say it out loud, we are not going to the playoffs again. And once they do that, I think they can move forward and just decide to be the bad guy. Try to spoil Chantilly's chance. You know, move forward to making Herndon, you know, not getting a win in the district. Try to just spoil some teams. Make some teams have a bad night. Be the bad guy. And if they do that, because they're not, I mean, try to make teams feel how they're feeling right now and, you know, spoil Chantilly and stuff like that. I think they can move forward and just play loose. Play happy. Play like there's you know, play like they don't really have a future. Just play for that night. And I think they can bounce back. I think they might be able to take out a Chantilly team in the last game of the year.
All right, so Centerville is a team that has given Chantilly fits over the last couple of years, and you think they could play spoiler to several teams' playoff possibilities. Speaking of playoff possibilities, guys, Chantilly and Robinson are taking each other on this week in what might be the game that a lot of PowerPoints are based on. Chantilly has an opportunity right now at 6-1 overall and 3-0 in that district. I believe if they beat Robinson, they're going to be a lock for the playoffs, and you know, unless they go in and spoil it through the rest of the year. Paul, tell me why Chantilly's going to win this week over Robinson.
Well, first of all, I said back before they played Herndon, I said that they have Herndon, Robinson, Westfield, Centerville. They have to split those games and they'll make the playoffs. Part of splitting those games is, I mean, they got to beat Robinson. I think they will. Look at this. In the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in the last 7 games, they've held 6 out of 7 games. They've held opponents to a touchdown or less.
Right.
Robinson has lost 2 games.
It's only been 1 game this year that they haven't held teams.
It's only
under
been
a
1
touchdown
against
or
Lake
less.
Braddock, and they lost that game.
Right.
Robinson's lost 2 games. Guess how many points Robinson has scored in those 2 games?
I can't guess.
7 points apiece. So Chantilly should, if they keep on going, their defense keeps on going, they should hold Robinson to 7 points. Guess what happens? Robinson loses, and with Mike Meyer out, I mean, their biggest offensive threat out, that's scary for Robinson.
Mirza, you think otherwise?
I think otherwise. I think Robinson is going to get on top of this game. 1, because they have to. I think this is their make or break game of the season. If they lose this one, Chantilly goes ahead of them as a lock for the playoffs, and it's going to be really tough for them to get the third spot, Division 6. If they win this one, they keep everything alive. It's not the end of the road for Chantilly necessarily, but it is for Robinson if they lose. I think the experience is going to take over. They've been there the last 7 or so years. I don't know for sure right now off the top of my head, but they've made the playoffs for each of the last 7 years. And I think Chantilly, who's a new contender in the Concord, to say, I think Robinson's experience comes on top over them and defeats them.
All right, so we've given you our predictions on what's going to happen. Let's show you what is actually statistical fact, which is the power points in the northern region and what teams fall where. And this will help give you folks at home a better idea of who's falling where in the playoff race. Westfield's leading not just the region but the state. You see, these are the region PowerPoint leaders right here, but Westfield is also leading the state in PowerPoints with 26.1 rating. And out of the bye week, they still gained points because of rider points. It's a really difficult formula to tell you folks at home, but just trust us. They gained 0.8 points. Okay, Stonebridge is just cruising. Doesn't seem that anyone in Division 5 is going to be able to stop them. So you see in the 3 and the 4 right there, Chantilly and Oakton. Oakton is fueling Chantilly to more PowerPoints every week because Chantilly beat Oakton already. So Oakton, which plays one of the most difficult schedules in the state, playing Stonebridge, Madison, and other teams in the Concord, of course, because Chantilly beat Oakton, that might have been their playoff clincher early in the season, now that Oakton's turned it on and continues to win, and Oakton having beaten Robinson, which you see down there at number 7. Yorktown, a team that has surprised us all, jumping up into the PowerPoint ratings. They got a win over Edison. We'll get a chance to talk to you a little bit about that later. 22.4 PowerPoints. Look at South County, second year, up at number 6, 22.3 points. That is an incredible, incredible jump with a plus 1.5 change after beating Annandale this past week. And then there's Robinson, one of the only 2 teams still ranked up there in the top 10 in the northern region, having lost, but their points still staying and keeping them in the top 10. Lee out of the Patriot. Marshall might be the first time Marshall's been a PowerPoint top 10 and I couldn't tell you how long. The Marshall Statesman. So Marshall's key game is going to be versus Madison right at the end of the year, a game they almost had wrapped up last year. And then there's Lake Braddock after a loss, staying tied for 9th with Marshall. So there you have your Northern Region PowerPoint leaders, folks. That gives you a better idea of who fits where in the playoff picture. Guys, let's get a chance to talk a little bit about Westfield before we move on too far. Paul, you mentioned they're obviously the lock for you to make the playoffs, being one of the only 2 undefeated teams, the other being Stonebridge. But my question to you is, out of the bye week and then playing Fairfax,
which is like having 2 bye weeks in a row.
Well, I mean, and no slight to Fairfax, but they're a team that struggled in the Concord. So this is the rest of their schedule. Bye week, Fairfax, then they play Chantilly and Robinson. Is it like waking up from a nap and then going into the Lion's Den?
Well, they're going to have to shake off the dust and shake it off fast. For 2 weeks. I mean, again, Fairfax played a game with them. Let's be honest. I mean, but Westfield has such more talent on their team, so playing a team like Fairfax doesn't really sharpen their skills.
Right.
So 2 weeks there, when jumping into Chantilly and Robinson, Chantilly, obviously, we talked about defense, and Robinson's still a great team. So they're going to have to shake off that dust, shake it off fast, and I think I trust Verbanek that he's going to get after them in practice. They should be fine, but it might be something to worry about when they play Chantilly.
Not just the Concord Sports Report, folks. We're going to jump into the Liberty District here. I want to show you, before we do that, though, we want to show you where one Liberty District team is leading our Connection newspaper's top 10 poll, a Liberty District team. You don't usually see that. Stonebridge, for the last 3 to 4 weeks, has been at the top of our poll. Stonebridge, 39 votes, almost a unanimous number 1. The previous ranking, of course, was at number 1 last week. Westfield right behind. Chantilly, Oakton, and Robinson. Oakton beat Robinson last week, yet they are still tied for a 4th place ranking. Oakton's a team that not only started the year at the number 10 ranking, but fell off of our poll quite a few times as they had an up and down start to the season. Robinson moves down from number 3. Lee jumps up from number 8 to number 6. South County baffling us all. We don't know how they're doing it. Need to test what's in the water over there in Lorton. Those boys have just come out of the gates in their second year for a number 7 ranking on our Connection newspaper's top 10 ranking. Of course, then there's Yorktown, which just defeated Edison. Edison stays ranked, and Annandale bringing up the rear there at number 10. Just got a loss to South County, which jumped up to 7 from 10, so they almost switched places there. Annandale down from 6. Okay, guys, we get a chance now to see Stonebridge there atop the top 10 ranking. Let's show you what Stonebridge has done so far this year in the Liberty District with the current Liberty District standings. Take it away, Paul.
We got Stonebridge here, 4-0 in the district, 7-0 overall. Right behind them, don't sleep on the Statesman, Marshall at 3-1, 6-1 overall. Next, you got Woodson, 3-1, 4-3. Then Madison, 3-1 and 4-3 also. Langley's there, 2-2 with a 2-5 overall record. We have South Lakes at 1-3 with a 2-5 overall record. Jefferson struggling in the district, but do have 2 wins overall. 0-4 in the district, 2-5 overall. And then you have McLean, still have not found that win yet. 0-4 in the district and 0-7 overall.
Okay, so we see Stonebridge there, the only other undefeated team that we've talked about. And staying undefeated is a difficult thing to do, Paul. They got a win this last week over McLean, which was, I believe, 62-something victory, 62-6 victory. You've got some interesting facts about where Stonebridge is in all of these different rankings. Of course, they're number 1 in our ranking. But we did talk a little bit this week. They're number 3 in the VHSL rankings. They're number 2 in the PowerPoints in the region. They're number 4 in the AP poll. They close out the season with some Liberty District teams in Woodson, Marshall, and South Lakes. Almost the same question now I got to ask you that we asked about Westfield out of their bye week and taking on Fairfax is, and we're not slighting the other Liberty teams, but, you know, have they played anybody that they're going to see in the postseason that is going to be as difficult? I mean, taking on these other teams from the Central region and Eastern region, they're a little bit more difficult than the Liberty.
Again, yeah, no slight on the Liberty teams, great teams, but Stonebridge and Coach Mickey Thompson, they're just playing on a whole nother level. They're not going to find any real competition. This is a team that beat up Oakton. I mean, they're not going to find any other competition in the Liberty District, which is a little scary when they actually get into the the regional tournament. I mean, these Bulldogs might not be as sharp as they could be. Again, as I trust Verbanek, I trust Thompson. He's going to get after them in practice. They'll be fine.
Okay, real quick, want to touch on Langley. Got a 42-0 victory over South Lakes. Langley, will the real Langley please stand up? We don't know who Langley is yet. They've struggled out of the gate. We're not really sure what they're able to accomplish. We're not going to touch too much on Langley this week, but we do want to touch on Marshall. They beat Jefferson. So Marshall now locks up a 6-4 season no matter what they do from here on out. If they lose the rest of their games, they're going to be 6-4. They have the opportunity to win out and potentially make the postseason for the first time since the Stone Ages. Okay, we're not really sure. It's been so long for Marshall. Back in the 80s, they had their dominant run to the region playoffs, but it's been a long time coming for them. Coach J.T. Biddison doing a heck of a job. They broke a 12-year losing season streak. They've got South Lake, Stonebridge, and Madison left on the schedule. We want to show you, before we move on to the rest of these Liberty teams, the PowerPoints in the northern region, because we just want to get a chance to show you exactly where Marshall falls. They're right there at tied for 9th, 20.7, and they've got South Lakes. Not going to get them much PowerPoints if they win that game. If they somehow miraculously beat Stonebridge, they will be a lock for the playoffs and potentially the Super Bowl. And then there's that Madison game that they almost had wrapped up last year. Okay, Mirza, why is Woodson a scary team? They scared the heck out of Madison this week. You were at that game. Tell us what happened.
They definitely scared the heck out of Madison. I mean, they came out the very first kickoff, the opening kickoff of the game, to do an onside kick. They were just very aggressive. They recovered that. They run the ball down for a touchdown. They actually jumped up on top of Madison 14-0. By the end of the first quarter, Madison had only had 6 plays, offensive plays, including a punt in that first quarter. The Woodson team, like I've been saying all year long, very young. They tired out, and they dropped 17 consecutive points to lose the game in the end, 17-14. But they kept themselves in a position from which they could win the game. They were 1 play away from it. And
Lawrence Nosp had a big game. Talk a little bit about him. What kind of runner is he over there for the Cavaliers?
he's just a straight-up runner. He just goes right down the middle. He runs right down your throat. He had unofficially 197 yards in that game.
Wow.
And it was 100 yards in the first quarter, 97 in the first half, 97 yards in the second half.
Wow.
He just did not quit. You can wrap your arms around him. He'll just keep his legs going and going and going.
Wow.
But I do have to give credit to the Madison defense for stopping him twice on a 4th and short, which eventually turned the game around and allowed him to stay on top 17-14.
Also want to give credit where credit's due. Madison's kicker, that has been a problem over the years for the Warhawks. The kicking game has struggled. But junior Tom Kennedy looks to be the kicker of the future there at Madison High School. Got another year left, of course. Kicks a 20-yarder for the decisive victory, or the deciding points in the victory. A 20-yard field goal for the 17-14 win over Woodson. Okay, guys, let's get right into this Patriot District as we're running out of time almost here on the Fairfax Scary Report. Okay, we've got that scary Patriot District, Mirza. Tell me a little bit about why people should be frightened of South County.
South County has a lot of people frightened at this point. Anybody who's left on their schedule should be frightened of them. They have the great coaching that's getting them into position to win games. They got the offense that's going to get them close enough for their kicker to score the points when they need points from the kicker. If they can get 3 instead of 7, that's fine with them. And they got the defense that can stop a lot of teams as well. They're a team that is 2 plays away from actually being 7-0 instead of 5-2.
Wow.
Their 2 losses were a 1-point loss to Lee. They got done over the top for a 50-yard pass, touchdown pass.
Wow.
And the other loss was a 21-17 loss to Lake Braddock in the last minute of the game.
Wow.
So they're only 2 plays away from being 7-0 instead of 5-2 at this point.
And while we're talking about South County, I want to get a chance to tell the folks at home that the Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week will be South County Hayfield. Mirza, Hayfield's a team that has struggled in the Patriot District, but you talked to Coach Bendorf this week. What did he have to say about the Hawks? Is he worried? That's a rivalry game.
He is very wary of the Hawks. And the reason is, he says as a coach, as a player in the Northern region when he went to high school, he's been in enough of rivalry games to know that these are the games where upsets happen. You look at it to last year, South County was winless until they played Hayfield. Their rival school, kids know each other. The players know each other really well. They went to school together until that point. South County got their only win of the season against Hayfield. Is karma going to come back to haunt them and let Hayfield get their only win of the season this year? It's left to be answered, but we'll see on Friday. It's going to be a great game, I think.
It's going to be a scary game.
Scary.
We hope nothing will come back to haunt anyone here on the Fairfax.
No pun intended.
Scary
really
report.
need a thesaurus. We need something other than scary. Frightful. That's what we're going with.
Okay, tell me about the terrifying Lee team, Mirza. They really are. I mean, they're a team. They're 4-0. You had an exclusive interview with Coach Rob Everett this week, Mirza. Tell me all about him, what he had to say about his team. They're off to an incredible start.
Yeah, Lee is 4-0 in the district at this point, 5-2 overall. They're facing a really good West Potomac team this next week, who's just come off of a huge victory from Lake Braddock, and it's a very dangerous team in skill positions. If a win over West Potomac, Lee could set up a potential Patriot District Championship match against Annandale the next week, and that is what Coach Everett, he says he doesn't want to look past anyone. They got to take care of business at their homecoming game on Friday. But if they could get past West Potomac, then he wants this chance to play against Annandale to prove to the people that they deserve to be the Patriot District champions, and that's the huge game out of this district that's left over on the schedule.
Mirza, a difficult loss for Lake Braddock to West Potomac this week. What happened? Lake Braddock was ranked last week. They're still hanging on to their power points and tied with Marshall in the top 10 of the Northern Region power points. What happened to Braddock?
That loss really hurt them. I mean, instead of going 5-2 overall, now they're 4-3. It's a game that they should have won. It's a game that they should have won with their size, with their great, the kids that are playing really hard over there, really hard-nosed football, that Coach Porter is teaching them over there. But, like we said, West Potomac is not a team to be overlooked either. 3-1 in the district at this point, So they really bring it for those Patriot District games.
All right. We've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. West Springfield, horrifying season for West Springfield, Mirza.
Spooky.
They lost to Lee, and it's kind of the same story. The defense. I mean, they allowed Lee's Brandon Cameron to lead the Washington D.C. metro area in rushing and over 300 yards and I believe 4 touchdowns. What happened? Can they just not stop anybody?
With West Springfield, it depends if the defense can just make 2 or 3 stops in the game. They can win the game because their offense is so unbelievably high-powered. I mean, they scored 34 points in that game, and that is a low-scoring game for West Springfield offense this year. 34 points in any other game usually wins you a game. But they did give up those 40 points to Lee, But, I don't want to take anything away from Lee. They're a great team. They have a lot of weapons offensively. They can hit you at all aspects of the game.
Okay, Annandale, tough loss. Their dominance in that Patriot district since Robinson left. I mean, when the story was when Robinson left, it was supposed to be Annandale dominating that district, and they did their job last year. They went undefeated in the district, and they got into the playoffs and lost to Oakton. What's going on with Annandale? And they lost to a second-year South County team. Mirza, that's not supposed to happen to Annandale.
It's not, but like I said, South County, great coaching. They got, they probably prepared themselves really, really well for this game. And, Coach Bendorf wasn't going to let, Nate Cartagena run all over them. So, it was one score, and then it was keep the shutout, keep this kid shut out, make somebody else hurt us, and Annandale couldn't do that.
Annandale quarterback Nathan Cartagena, a kid that has just dominated this region in running yards. I mean, usually you think of quarterbacks, you think throwing. In high school, quarterbacks love to run, and it's by design. Mm-hmm. But Cartagena, not only can he run by design, but he is also the king of getting away from tackles and moving out of the pocket, and he can definitely he's got some wiggle to him, let's say.
A lot of his yards, come from just a broken play going back to pass. He has to scramble, and he's picking up 20 yards on a scramble. That's where a lot of his yards come from. He's a real athletic kid.
Speaking of scrambling, we want to scramble to show you the Northern Region PowerPoint scene. We want to, we've given it to you a bunch of times here tonight, folks, but we want you to be very sure of the PowerPoint and the postseason race here. Really try to soak it in here. Of course, Westfield up at the top, but let's start from the bottom with Lake Braddock on a difficult loss. They're clinging to their hopes there. Marshall could potentially see a playoff berth. I know they don't want to think about it prematurely yet, but that Liberty District, besides Stonebridge, is seeing more parity than it's seen in years.
Definitely up for grabs.
And then there's Lee. Robinson's going to have a lot to say about what they do in the postseason if they can bite Chantilly up there at number 3. South County, of course, mystifying us all and horrifying the Patriot District. And there's Yorktown, Oakton trying all it can do to scratch and keep its way in the playoff picture after such a successful run last year. For them to be just up there with a 23.4 power rating is pretty incredible after losing what they lost from last year's team. All the seniors they lost. They do have some key elements, though, back, which is their offensive line. I believe they have 3 offensive linemen back from a state championship team, which made its living rushing the ball. Jonathan Kedrock told us all about the Oakton offensive line after he was pounding some hard yards this week. Then, of course, there's Chantilly and their defense, but don't sleep on their offense either. Nate Warwick's got an arm on him. He's not afraid to throw the ball. And then there's Cross.
And Pace. A double team of Cross and Pace, right. Definitely getting some yards there.
They cross you up and they pace themselves, you know what I mean? All right, then there's Stonebridge.
Wow.
This show has spiraled. Okay, there's Stonebridge, and then there's Westfield up at the top. So there, finally, folks, is your terrifying Northern Region PowerPoint leaders for the Northern Region. Guys, big games left on the schedule before we get to the National District. What's the biggest game in the last couple weeks of this season coming up for you guys on your beat? What do you think is going to be the big one, Mears? You got a couple for us?
I got a couple for you. I think, first of all, coming up this week, we have the Chantilly at Robinson game, and I think that has so much implications, not just for those 2 teams in the playoff picture, but for a lot of other teams, such as Oakton, right, who's lost to one, beat the other. I don't know which one helps them more, but it's a big game for everybody. I think another huge game comes up the week after, and that's Annandale Lee game, and I think that's going to be the game that determines the Patriot District championship.
Paul, what's the big one on your schedule?
November 3rd, look for Westfield Chantilly. But if that's if Westfield wins. If Robinson wins this week, look for November 10th, Westfield Robinson. It's all about the Concord, and it's all about Westfield has Chantilly, then Robinson. Chantilly has Robinson, Westfield, and Centerville. Centerville has Herndon and Chantilly. It's all coming down to a head here.
Okay, guys, I've often been accused of being a homer for the Marshall Statesman, but I'm going to tell you right now, one of the most interesting games that I see left on the schedule is Marshall versus Madison in the last week of the season. That is a rivalry game that was last year was one of the best games seen in the region. Marshall, a perennial bottom dweller in this region, let's just be honest. Of course, they're on their way up now, but they had Madison, which last year was almost, I believe, better than they are this year. They had Madison on the ropes at Madison, and Madison hit I think it was a 60-yard halfback pass. It grows in 10 yards every year, every time we talk about it. But it's a legendary thing over there, and it's a big deal between Madison and Marshall now. The rivalry for quite some years died down. I believe it's picking back up as the teams have evened out talent-wise, and I believe it's going to be a game that not only determines, obviously, bragging rights for our neighborhood rivalry game, but also might, depending on what those teams do in their last couple weeks of the season, have some implications for the postseason, depending on who does what. Obviously Marshall all the way up there with their PowerPoint. So that's going to be, I believe, one of the biggest games left on the schedule. Okay, let's jump right into the National District as we show you the current standings for the National District, a horrifying district. Yorktown at 3-1 and 6-1 overall. Yorktown Patriots have just surprised us all, kind of just slowly climbed up to the top. Never saw that coming. They beat Edison this past week in a pretty big victory. Mears is going to get a chance to tell us all about. And Edison was a team that was, of course, ranked in our top 10 and still is, but Yorktown jumps up there after defeating them this week. Loudon Valley kind of don't really know what to do with them this year. I mean, they've beat some teams, but they've lost some teams, and then you just don't really know what to do with them because the teams they lost to were games they should have won. And the teams they beat were maybe teams they shouldn't have beat. So you're not really sure what to do about Valley. Mount Vernon, Falls Church, they're at 2-2 in the district. Of course, Washington and Lee also at 2-2. Some work still to be done for Wakefield and Stewart. Okay, folks. Mirza. At home, Mirza's going to get a chance. Settle in and listen to Mirza's mystifying, terrifying, and horrifying, scary report about Edison's scary last 2 weeks, though, Mirza, as we get serious here for a minute. I mean, Edison's had some scary last 2 weeks. They've lost in back-to-back games to South County, which, of course, we know now is a contender, and they just lost to Yorktown. What's going on with Edison?
Well, like you just said, they lost to South County 2 weeks ago, and now we know they're a contender. They lost to Yorktown this week, and now we know they're a contender. I mean, you see them up there in the PowerPoint ratings yourself. Edison, they lost to two good teams, and they're a great team. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that they're not 7-0 at this point, but 5-2. And the big thing for them is this weekend they face Loudon Valley at home, which could be another potentially difficult game for them. They could see themselves going 5-3, which would just be completely out of this world for this Edison team because they're very, very, very talented offensively and defensively. They have some great players in skill positions.
So you're saying this week is going to be either a trick or a treat?
Yes, BJ.
Go ahead.
So definitely, I mean, this week, Loudon Valley, they got to get back on the winning track, and they still have a chance of finishing 8-2.
Right.
Loudon Valley has only lost one National District game ever.
Wow.
It's only been 2 years, but ever.
That sounds crazy when you say it that way.
It's
ever, but it's only been 2 years.
But it's scary, isn't it?
On the other hand, you have Yorktown, who's 6-1 at this point. They're coming off of, they lost to Loudon Valley 2 weeks ago. Got their feet back on the ground, beating Mount Vernon. Nobody really noticed that because Mount Vernon, unfortunately, hasn't been that strong of a team over the last couple of years. And then they come over and they beat Edison in their homecoming game and just blow the whole National District out of proportion. Probably the deciding factor and the deciding game in the National District this year.
I think the real question at home that we should really be asking ourselves, folks, when you think about this year and the Northern Region, I think the real question you should be asking yourselves is, Why can't I quit you, Mirza?
Are you wearing a wig? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I actually am. I don't know if you've noticed that at home, folks, but this is actually a wig. It's not my actual haircut. This is a wig, and these are glasses.
Wow.
I know. You might actually think that this is what I look like. And I just want the folks at home to know that that's not what you guys look like either. I mean, this
Yes,
is.
it is.
Well, yeah, you're just wearing a cowboy
This
hat.
is me wearing sunglasses.
Practically, yes. It actually is you wearing sunglasses because you are the king.
Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, we want to of course apologize to you for this incredibly long hour you spent with us.
Sorry if we scared you a whole lot.
Acting like 5-year-olds, but it's been pretty fun. Of course, we want to thank our underwriters for making this show here possible. But before we do that, we want to tell you all about the FSN Game of the Week. Woo! The scary game of the week. Hayfield will be taking on South County at South County in Lorton. Folks, get down to Lorton and get on that game. That's going to be a good rivalry game. Those teams are going to frighten the heck out of each other. Games are available on Cox Digital Cable on demand. That's right, you can demand them to your TV set. And check out our website for details on how to do that. The FSN Game of the Week also re-airs on Channel 10. This week's re-air will be Centerville at Robinson. That was a 35-14 victory for Robinson. It was taped on October 13th. If you hadn't seen it yet, I'm sorry for spoiling it for you. It runs Saturday at 4:30, Monday at 3:30 on Cox and Comcast Channel 10. We're on the web, folks. You can see silly pictures of us in our costumes and dressed up in our wigs on FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. You can also read interesting bios and find out what the Fairfax Sports Network will be covering this week. CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And of course, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299.
What?
Are you guys serious?
You want to give me a lollipop or a Tootsie Roll? Get out of here with that, man. It's a Tootsie Roll. Give me some
Whoppers?
Yeah.
Okay,
Wow,
thank
that's better.
So while they trick or treat, folks, thanks for joining us here on the Fairfax Fright Fest, here on the Fairfax Sports Report. Join us next week when we talk about all the playoff implications on who did what this week. I want to thank our producer, Brian Nern, the king of producing. Hey, we're out. Enjoy us on demand on the Fairfax Sports Network. Well done, John.